Thank you very much for staying with us. In the next 30 or so minutes, we'll be discoursing on what the papers have put together for us this morning. Joining me shortly is President of the Ghana Journalists Association, Afeo Moni. He will be sharing his thoughts on some of the papers we have put together. But quite a number of startling revelations from the Auditor General's report. And he says, we recommend that the Chief Director of the Ministry of Health should renegotiate with UNICEF or AVAT to recover the outstanding amount. What does that have to do with? We know that some 5,109,600 doses of vaccines valued at $38,322 million were supplied to the National Cold Room, leaving a difference of about 81 plus million with UNICEF or AVAT. That's according to that revelation by the Auditor General. So Ghana has paid for $81.8 million worth of COVID-19 vaccines that have not, according to the Auditor General, been delivered. Of course, we've heard from the Health Ministry, talking about the situation and saying that we did not even have the capacity to take all of them at a go because we couldn't, keep them, so to speak, that we couldn't, they have to be refrigerated. We couldn't preserve them. That's the word I was looking for. And for that reason, we've not taken stock of all of them. Again, mention has been made that we've got some of these vaccines from other entities, partners here and there. And so that has stood in the gap for what quantities we would have wanted to come in. But after all this while, and especially as there's been a lot of contention about COVID-19 spending and how much exactly we have spent, and for all of this to have been kept, this adds to the opacity. It's like a brick wall. You can't see behind it. And I've always said, if you want to be transparent, you will be transparent. And if you want to be opaque, you will be opaque. But if you are opaque, it's like the Bible says, nothing can be hidden in darkness forever. There will be light that will expose it. I'm only saying this because guess what? So if this hadn't been, as some have said, a requirement, so to speak, by the IMF to get into some of these details so we know the nitty-gritty of what exactly happened, would we know of this information? And the question is, why shouldn't we know about it? If you live above the board, if you just let people know, oh, Ghana 4, this is what we're doing, and media, this is what is happening, this is how much we've allocated to this, but we've not taken stock of the vaccines yet because of these dynamics. No one would be questioning you now. But because we always like to skirt around issues, circumvent the truth, we always come to this point, and we seem never to learn. Never. Again, the Auditor General notes that the Ministry of Health, on behalf of the government of Ghana, paid an amount of $120 million to UNICEF or AVAT for the supply of these vaccines. Well, the rest is up to you to determine whether you feel satisfied with the use of our COVID-19 funds. Now that we know how that expenditure went, now that we know, in fact, there is some conflict between the figures that were given by the Ministry of Finance and what the Auditor General has audited. So there are about 3 other areas that have not been audited yet by the Auditor General. At least they do not form a part of the audited units, which would also result in other sums of money that we do not know how they were used. This entire COVID-19 bit, if you do the analysis, you would realize that we've raked in just about the same sum of money we're going to the IMF for. And we also know just about a quarter of the funds we received from donor partners, from bilateral partners, from the World Bank, the IMF, were pumped into actual direct COVID-19 work. Some of it went into LEAP, not bad. Some of it went into free SHS, not bad. But the question is, why not let the people know? And now, accountability has to come like pulling hair out of the nostrils. I'm just harping on this a bit this morning because honestly, having lived in different parts of the world, having been in Ghana, sometimes the way we do things makes, I'll leave it there. It just boggles my mind. But anyway, that said, let's get into other issues. We'll start with the Daily Graphic newspaper this morning. 96-year-old land dispute resolved. Case traveled from 1927 to 2023. You wouldn't believe. That's how long this case traveled. Just about what? 96 years. Well, I'll bring you some details of that story. We also have in the Daily Graphic this morning, government reaches revised agreement with banks. That's on page 21. There's also new utility tariffs nightmare for businesses. That's according to the Association of Ghana Industries. And that story is on page 13. We then look at PAC sittings. State pays $6.5 million, 6.5 million Ghana cedis cost over delayed project. And lackadaisical attitude risks 2030 rabies elimination target. Veterinary director expresses worry. All of those stories in the Daily Graphic newspaper. Let's see whether we can get some scoop on that shortly. So the Supreme Court has resolved a 96-year-old stool land dispute between two towns in the Ashanti region, Abono and Ideduako, by ruling in favor of the chief of Abono, Nana Otuo Entwi Buesiako. The dispute, which started in 1927, was first adjudicated by the Native Tribunal of Prempeh I. That's how far back it goes. Then Asantehene, who was ousted and exiled by the British in 1896 and later returned as Kumasihene in 1924. In a unanimous decision on Wednesday, January 18 this year, a 5-member panel of the Supreme Court held that the disputed 938 acres of land belonged to the Abono community. Consequently, the court gave possession of the land to Nana Entwi Buesiako and slapped the chief of Ideduako and defendants, Nana J. Penin, with a cost of 30,000 Ghana cedis and 40,000 Ghana cedis in damages for trespassing on the land. Quote, the plaintiff or appellant chief of Abono is granted declaration of title to and the recovery of possession of all that piece of parcel of the disputed land and called Abono and bounded on one side by Kuntunase, Ideduako, and Nyamieni, and identified as 938 acres of land specifically delineated on the survey map the court held. And so in 2007, just to give some historical antecedents to what happened, Nana Entwi Buesiako dragged Nana J. Penin to the Kumasi High Court to recover possession of the said land. The High Court upheld the case of the chief of Abono. Dissatisfied, the chief of Ideduako appealed to the Court of Appeal, where he lost, and that is how this matter ended at the doorstep of the Apex Court, the Supreme Court, which ordered the High Court to hear the dispute afresh and determine it by ordering a survey of the disputed area, taking into consideration the demarcation done by the Native Tribunal in 1927. But now it's finally been resolved by the Supreme Court, and I guess we can call it done and dusted. Let's go to page 13, where we can talk about utility tariffs and the Association of Ghana Industries. Industries are convinced that the new increment in utility tariffs recently by the PURC, the Public Utilities Regulatory Commission, will be counterproductive to their operations. They say at a time when an unstable environment coupled with uncertainty has weakened demand and continuously threatens the survival of industries, the implementation of the utility tariff increments for water and electricity would be a nightmare for business. They have therefore called on the PURC to expedite action towards the full reversal of the tariff structure in support of the government's industrial transformation agenda. The CEO of the Association of Ghana Industries, Seth Chum Akwabwa, in a statement issued yesterday, stated that the association and its members had taken note with serious concern the level of increment in the recent utility tariff review as released on January 16 this year by the PURC. Quoting him, he says, "We acknowledge this review is in line with a quarterly automatic adjustment as required of the regulator. We do appreciate the changes in the key determinants for tariff fixing since the last review in August 2022. However, the AGI stated that the level of utility tariff increments for water and electricity, as captured in the PURC's release, were too high for industry to bear, particularly at this time. And so that is the latest there as far as the AGI is concerned, and its moves to call for, or basically to see to a reversal of the latest utility tariffs. Let's get into some other stories as well. PAC sitting, that also on page 13. State pays 6.5 million Ghana cedi cost over delayed project. And the delay in the execution of a 1.4 million Ghana cedi project has resulted in the state paying an extra 6.5 million Ghana cedis for it. After awarding the contract to put up Edu Lodge in 2007 and paying 90% of the contract sum, the contractor abandoned site, citing ill health. This caused the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Regional Integration to reevaluate the contract and award it for 7.9 million Ghana cedis in 2019. This came up when the ministry appeared before the Public Accounts Committee of Parliament last Friday. This was at its sitting for the committee to consider the report of the Auditor General on the public accounts of ministries, departments, and agencies. The PAC chair, Dr. James Kluchi-Abeji, therefore charged officials of the Foreign Ministry to provide concrete reasons the project was abandoned. And these are some of the cycles that we see time and again, and contracts over time not completed, added cost, all to the taxpayer, and sometimes there's even nothing to show. We've been told in some instances when it comes to COVID-19 and the rest, payments were made in some sectors where there's absolutely nothing to show, yet money exchanged hands. So what exactly happened? Let's welcome Afe Omoni, former president of the Ghana Journalists Association. Mr. Omoni, a very good morning to you, sir.
Thank you very much. I hope the grace
I am
end.
Well, thank you so much. I hope you're well.
Very well by His grace.
We bless the Lord. So I've already looked at this 96-year-old land dispute that has been resolved. It took almost 100 years to resolve it. It actually dates back to the time of Prempeh I, and that is a good thing, setting some precedent in a way for some of these long-standing, intractable, if you like, land cases. It also says new utility tariffs, nightmare for businesses. I was just sharing the thoughts of the president of the AGI, the Association of Ghana Industries, who says the new adjustments in electricity and water prices is going to create a nightmare for businesses, Ghanaian businesses, especially on the back of the fact that people purchasing their products is not like before. They are facing so many dynamics with the banking industry and all of that, and this is really going to impact them. And there's also that issue I was just taking a look at the PAC sitting, and how the foreign ministry, between 2007 and 2019, there was the award of a first contract in 2007, 90% of the sum paid to the contractor, 1.4 million Ghana cedis. Out of the 1.4 million Ghana cedis, work was not done owing to ill health. Fast forward to 2019, same project, 6.5 million Ghana cedis. Any quick reactions to these stories we've looked at so far?
Let me start with the PAC issue, the litany of perceived acts of corruption and graft. Year after year, with unfailing regularity, the Public Accounts Committee holds public meetings to review some of these unfortunate incidents. But what is worrisome is the chronic difficulty and monumental failure of the authorities to deal surgically with the naked act of thievery and embracing corruption. This is an indictment on a sense of responsibility and accountability as a nation.
Right.
We need to tackle this issue from the root and not the branch. The root is to deal surgically with the perpetrators and block all the loopholes. And the branch approach is just to make noise when they are revealed, when this act are revealed, only to go to sleep for them to occur again. we are told that Parliament will hold a public meeting, public inquiry next week to tackle this issue. One prays that this will be followed by concrete action
Right.
to deal with the perpetrators. Again, in the name of comprehensive journalism, we require of the media to follow this issue to their logical end. Most often, we report such when they occur. We expose acts of corruption and go to sleep. This is the time, and the timing of this litany of corruption, the timing makes a mockery of a negotiation with the IMF. One can conclude that all economic growth are nothing but self-inflated. We are told that we've lost as much as 3.1 billion, whilst we're going cap in hand, begging for 3 billion. 3.1 billion has gone down the drain, whilst we are going for $3 billion. So, and the IMF that we are negotiating, the loan is not a gift. Again, we need to find money to pay back, and this will come with more pressure, economic pressure. This will pile up pressure on all of us as a nation. So there's a need for us. The only solution is to fix this surgical system at the root and not the branch. And I'm happy that the Supreme Court has brought analysis to the age-old land litigation. But there are copious examples of land litigations all over the country. And just last week, the Executive Secretary of Land Commission, James Dunstan, did indicate that with the aid of the technology, the Land Commission is going to fix some of these problems. And so this litigations, age-old litigations, be consigned to the judgment of history. One hopes that this will give us some light at the end of the tunnel, because many have lost, many have died in the course of litigations, and many houses have been plunged into debt as a result of litigation. And so this act of multiple states of land, the use of macho men act to seize properties which do not belong to them, should again be the thing of the past. Recently, we saw the military and other forces dealing surgically with these land guards. But again, in certain areas, land guardism is in full operation. So there's a need to extend the operations of the military to these areas so that legitimate property owners will have the peace of mind to develop their properties.
Well, interesting thoughts. Thank you for sharing. Let's take a quick look at education-related matters, especially as we're going to be discussing on some of them today on the show. Put out-of-school children in classrooms, Professor Anamwa Mensah urges government. That's in the middle spread of the Daily Graphic, pages 16 and 17. Now, the government should make conscious efforts to locate out-of-school children and put them in classrooms to ensure their proper development, an educational expert, Professor Jofus Anamwa Mensah, has said. He is quoted to have said, "Failure to put such children in school could result in their developing into certain personalities who would create problems for everyone." Professor Anamwa Mensah also called for increased investment in the educational sector to ensure no one was left behind, irrespective of where they were located, for the accelerated development of the country. Now, here's what the latest population census reveals. 1,215,546 children of school age 4 to 17 years in the country are not in school. Out of that number, almost 942,427 children had never attended school. This morning, for example, we're going to be dilating on the fact that in the Pandai district in the northern region, a lot of students in some schools don't even have desks on which to study, write, do anything in the classroom. We still have schools under trees and so many other dynamics. When you look at our educational sector, what do you see to be the things we're not getting right? And again, maybe just before you come in, when you look at the human capital index that the World Bank has been putting out time and again, year after year, it shows that our students are not catching up with the rest of the world. Our students are not able to keep pace with the rest of the world. The last time we saw our national science and math quiz students with other students elsewhere, we gave excuses about why they were not able to assemble the intestines and other internal organs of the human being so quickly. I don't know what we're missing, but we're obviously missing something. Your take, Afilmoni.
Free SHS is the greatest thing to have happened to Ghana after independence. And you have every cause to trust ourselves, especially the ruling government, for making it possible for every Ghanaian, irrespective of their background, to access free education at the senior high level. But those revelations point to the fact that we have relegated issues at the basic level to the periphery or the periphery. As a result, our children, as just indicated, cannot cope with contemporary trends. So there's a need for us to sharpen our focus on basic education. Basic means most important. The simplest meaning of basic, anything basic, means the most important. So the most important aspect of education is not the tertiary level. The most important aspect of education is not SHS or JHS. The most important is the root, the primary, the foundation. So if the foundation is weak, the superstructure would actually be weaker. So there's a need for us as a nation to once again sharpen our focus, put more emphasis on at the basic level. When such incidents are exposed in the media, and TBT deserves kudos by their mission expose. Children sitting on bare floor, right? No table, no talk, nothing at all. Let alone talk about the conditions in which they live. All this impacts negatively our human capital. So, once again, a call goes to the education authorities not to put all emphasis. This is not to de-emphasize senior high school education, senior high school. This is the time. Why rolling out the free education? Again, calls have been made, strident calls are coming to take a second look at the senior high school education. Those who are in a position to pay should be made to pay, because we are facing challenges in fixing even provision of food for children in senior high school. So if people are in a position to pay, the finance minister is on record having said that he feels guilty going to Achimota school to dump his children without paying a first one. So we first review the free SHS without undermining the philosophy behind this free education. We need to go to the basic level and address the challenges there. Otherwise, the challenges will go and affect or dilute our human capital.
Interesting thoughts. Let's also look at this one, these two stories very quickly. We're proud of modest gains. That's the Vice President, Dr. Baumia. And the Vice President says he is proud of the modest gains achieved by the Akufo-Addo-led New Patriotic Party administration. Notwithstanding the achievements, the Vice President said there was still more room for improvement and that the government was working tirelessly to get the country back on track. There's also bonds coupon payment on page 21. Government banks reach revised agreement, and the government has agreed to pay 5% coupon interest this year with regard to bonds that are held by banks only. It will also pay a single coupon of 9% on the 12 new bonds to be issued to bank holders who tender their old bonds. The government and the bankers also agreed on the removal or amendment of all clauses in the exchange memorandum that empowered the Republic to, at its sole discretion, vary the terms of the exchange. We know that recently the Auditor General, the Attorney General and Minister of Justice has been speaking on some of these matters. You cannot just vary someone's, there are regulations. If you can't roll over my bill, for example, like we've seen with the cocoa bill, with now some agreements being arrived at and all of that. All of these have happened. So 2 quick stories to reflect on in about a minute. The Vice President says we are proud of our modest gains, and he says the government is working tirelessly to get the country back on track. Do you see that tireless work? And what is your quick reaction to where we find ourselves on the bonds coupon payment?
News on agreement between the banks and the government on the nagging issue of the domestic exchange program is so welcome. But we're going to blow into a crisis of unthinkable proportions. And we're happy that the government has acted with promptitude to address this issue. I believe there are other issues which should be addressed. At least the first step has been taken, and bondholders can heave a sigh of relief that light is flickering at the end of the tunnel. Again, this is not to rake up fresh food. We fail to foresee this, what that's happening. We fail to address the issue from the problem, from the root. Before you even touch the savings of individuals, prudence dictates that you engage them, but this was not done, and only for us to go back in circles. So this idea of only going in circles without anticipating the challenges we impose upon ourselves should be a thing of the past. And the Vice President has that all the latitude as a politician to tout his government's achievements. And many of those who also look at the other side. Every story has 2 or more sides. One side is that yes, they face some modest gains. Another side is that we still have a long way to go. And so it's up to the public to judge. We cannot underestimate the intelligence of the ordinary Ghanaian. They don't need any piece of intelligence to decide on this, to decide, to arrive at a conclusion, whether modern gains have been made, whether still we are going backwards in so many cycles. So yes, we cannot judge the fact that some gains have been made, and the Vice President also has the right to also praise to the heavens the achievements made by the government. But the reality on the ground is that we still have a long way to go as a nation.
We still have a long way to go as a nation. We actually have a long way to go with the papers, and we'll do that in the next 5 to 6 minutes. Krobia Asante Technical Vocational School closed down indefinitely. That's the Ghanaian Times newspaper, one of the first stories there, and it has to do with some acts of vandalism, and we've heard from the Ashanti Regional Minister on that. Farmer gets 4 years for stealing from police commander's bungalow. Talk of the impudence. And Pensioner Bondholder Forum engages former presidents on exemption from domestic debt exchange program. And there's been talk now of the fact that pensioner bondholders will actually be exempted. So the Pensioner Bondholder Forum has begun the process of engagements with former President John Agyekum Kufuor and former President John Dramani Mahama to seek their sympathy, support, and intervention for their cause. The forum said, as a result of these engagements, quote, "We have cancelled our intended convergence at the premises of the Ministry of Finance on Monday, January 23, 2023, and informed the police accordingly." The story goes on to say, Pensioner Bondholder Forum is a forum for the protection of pensioner investments and serves as the mouthpiece of all retirees across the country who have invested in government bonds. And so they've taken it a notch further and they are going to be interacting with former presidents John Agyekum Kufuor and John Dramani Mahama to help them resolve the issue. There's also Auditor General's report, another concern. 26 ambulances valued at $4 million yet to arrive to support COVID-19 management. The story is on page 13. Let's get there very quickly. And Ghana is yet to receive 26 ambulances valued at $4 million, which it ordered to support COVID-19 management. An Auditor General's report on the country's COVID-19 expenditure has revealed. The report, covering the period March 2020 to June 2022, revealed that the Ministry of Health signed a contract on December 15, 2021 for the supply of Toyota Hayes Deluxe ambulances. Out of the total cost of $4,049,460.12, the document said $607,419.02 was paid for the vehicles to be delivered by January 15, 2022, but they remained undelivered as of November 28, 2022. It said the chief director of the ministry attributed the delay to a request made by the unnamed supplier for extension to enable the supplier to meet some technical specifications. It noted that, quote, under the current economic difficulties, the supplier could apply for price variation to unduly increase the cost of the contract, which could have been avoided if the ambulances had been supplied as scheduled. There's a lot here to do with the facts and the figures, but quick reactions to these stories. Pensioner bondholders and these ambulances. It reminds me of the other ambulance issue that we've not even completed dealing with.
The issue of 26 ambulances not being delivered, meanwhile, the nation has budgeted more than $4 million. And other revelations from the Auditor General all paint a picture of the leaking state pest, and which is leaking profusely instead of protecting the state pest. People without any purpose have found ways and means of leaking and lining their pockets. And it also gives an inkling of the stench which is so pervasive in the public sector. And the only way to utilize this stench is for actions to be taken. Number one, to plug the loophole, and number two, to deal surgically with the perpetrators. So we are tired of going in circles. This is the time for us to act, especially at the time when our economy is on the rope, when the cost of living is becoming more vitally taxed, and when, as a nation, we are confronted with all kinds of issues, especially about children whose future is so bleak because of the failure of the state to provide them with basic needs. On the vandalism at Phobia Santi School, it boggles the mind, it even terrifies the soul, that students at this age, in their 15, 13, 16, 17, 18, will go to the extent of damaging school property with impunity. And one thing about impunity is that if it's not tackled at the root, it ignites a self-propelling cycle, which becomes hellishly difficult to deal with.
Right.
We've seen such acts of vandalism in others, and yet the children who are held to perpetrate them the more. We are told that in response to the vandalism at Phobia Santi School, a dean of discipline is going to be appointed by Ghana Education Service. And one wonders what this appointment can do to help address this challenge. So it is not the school authorities alone who have the responsibility to address the challenge. Parents.
Right.
Parents. So parents should do more to bring up their children in a way that when they grow, they will not depart from discipline. So parents, so we need, again, the root approach. If parents fail to discipline their children, bring them up in such a way that they will discipline wherever they go. They go to secondary schools and even universities to make us misbehave. The other day it was Commonwealth and other students, university students, people who are supposed to be enlightened, doing things which are very opposite of enlightenment. So just the time for parents, please be up to your responsibility. Live up to your responsibility. Train your children so that when they grow, wherever they go, depart on the discipline you instill in them.
Mr. Mone, thank you for those calls and thank you for joining us for this discussion this morning. We wish you the best of the day, sir.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure.
Afil Mone is a former president of the Ghana Journalists Association. Just leave you with some headlines. Father kills son, Ahuntu Mano, a farming community in the Ahanta West municipality of the Western region, where there is shock as a father has shot his biological son to death. Banks to use Cocoa Board's deposits to pay cocoa bills, and retail customers who may not want to roll over their cocoa bills will be paid by the Ghana Cocoa Board deposits or placements at the banks. These stories in the middle spread, not the middle spread actually, pages 6 and 7 of the Daily Guide newspaper. Initially payments were made and some withdrawals were then subsequently made. So if you don't want to roll over, the opportunity will be given you to take your funds. Fuel prices to drop, that's according to COPEC. The graphic business debt exchange program, insurance sector takes huge hit, 40% of assets in government securities. And finally, the final newspaper, 208.7 million Ghana cedi COVID-19 projects uncompleted, though deadline exceeded. Those are the stories we have for you this morning. But before we get into sports, are you ready for the grand finale of the Ghana Science and Tech Explorer Prize Challenge? 50 schools from the Greater Accra and Ashanti regions are ready to showcase the prototype products aimed at solving societal challenges. Which team emerges winner of the G-Step Challenge? Join us tomorrow at the Accra International Conference Center. The time is 3 p.m. sharp. There'll also be an exhibition by our young ones as they seek to provide solutions to the myriad problems in our environment. Make a date with us and be part of the first ever award ceremony to reward our future innovators and inventors. The G-Step Challenge is organized by Dream Oval and supported by Foundation Bortner and Joy Prime. Up next, the latest in sports.